I'm here today with a really good friend of mine, Ruth Toledo Altschuler, who is a very experienced flower essence practitioner. And it's my privilege, I'm Octavia Brooks, Shamanic Success Mentor. It's my privilege to find out more about Ruth today and share her with you because I am so impressed with her. She's had a long career in this field and a long and successful profession helping lots and lots of people with flower essences. And not everybody knows about flower essences. It seems like they kind of come and go from fashion. Several years ago, 15, 20 years ago, they were in fashion in Portland, Oregon, and that's a main place where I became introduced to them and became very impressed with the gentle and yet effective way that they work with people. And so, in a nutshell, Ruth, can you tell us a little bit about flower essences? And I always get this question about the difference between flower essences and essential oils that might be made from flowers, and then homeopathy, because I understand homeopathy is a form of energy medicine. Most people don't know that, but I get that comparison with flower essences a lot.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer your question. So, let's first go into essential oils. And essential oils, from what we know, have been around for many centuries, and they are a very concentrated, oftentimes distilled, but sometimes resulting from um, extraction of the oil from woods or from different parts of the plant. And the essential oils have aromatic qualities and a whole spectrum of healing qualities. And one of the things that's really important for people to understand is that to generate a very small quantity of essential oil, and sometimes really minimal quantities, one needs large amounts of plant material. So some plants are very generous in how much essential aromatic oils they produce that can be extracted, like lavender, for instance, or lemon. And other plants, like rose petals, you need tons to produce a tiny amount.
I
And
heard
that's why
that.
the prices of essential oils vary so much. They have amazing healing qualities. They do affect the physical body. They enter through the senses, but they do have a physical impact in the system as well. So that is a modality in itself, and it's really not related to flower essences. It's a modality on its own right. Now, homeopathics have been developed well before what we know as flower essences in the form that they are prepared at this time. And homeopathic preparations are energy remedies that come from different substances. Sometimes they come from plants, different parts of plants, but also minerals and even organic substances, even bodily substances. And the way they are prepared, there's a process of potentizing and what they call, I think, dynamization. So there's a certain protocol. Now, one of the things with homeopathics is that the way they've been researched and tested is that when you use a certain remedy that you need, it's going to produce results, including on the physical level. But if you don't need it, it can actually cause certain um, physical manifestations. So um, that's why it's really important that when people are using homeopathics, if they're doing kind of more intensive work with it, that they get the right guidance with people that are trained. Now, flower essences came and they were developed the way we know them today. They were developed in the 1930s in England by a man who was a physician, and then he became a homeopath. And then he was searching for something that would help the work that he was doing and some hypotheses that he had about how to help people in their attitudes. And he went out to the fields and he was having these feelings and emotional states within him. And then he would test and take the dew of a certain plant, the dew that was on the flowers, and he would then feel a shift in that state that he was experiencing. And that's how he initiated this research. And he created what we know as the Bach flower remedies and rescue remedy that most people know. And from there, there's been further research beginning in the 1970s and in the 1980s. At the same time, in different countries, all these researchers began developing lines of essences of plants growing in the ecosystem where they were. And so now we have all these different flower essences. But flower essences are basically information of the plant in the moment of the peak of its flowering. Flowers are gathered in that moment that the plant is radiating as if it's illuminated at the peak of the blossoming. And flowers are collected, placed on the surface of a bowl of water, and they lie under the sun for a few hours. And in this way, they imprint the information of the whole evolutionary wisdom of that plant. And then the flowers are given back to the earth, and that water with the information that's imprinted there is the mother essence that's then diluted twice to create the essence combinations that we use in our dosage bottles. So it's a very low impact modality. It uses small amounts of plant material, and it can be diluted many times, and yet the effects are subtle but quite deep and powerful.
Oh my gosh. What magical, you have a fantastic storyteller, Ruth. What magical stories, and what a magical mystical inception of this modality. When I was studying, like I said, in Portland about 20 years ago, I heard that story from a bunch of people who were really connected to the fairy realms. And they think that the fairies had something to do with Bach getting these ideas about which nectar to drink from, or which dewdrop to take from which plant to help his mood. And that group actually used to, there were a number of people doing what you said, researchers, and the way they researched, there was a bit of spiritual channeling involved. And I don't know if that's part of anything you do with
That's a
what
very good question. I love it.
yes,
So,
I'd love to hear about
um,
how you talk
yeah,
to the plants. I know you talk to the plants, Ruth. Tell us how you
there,
do.
the research of flower essences has a series of levels. I'll talk about three of them. One of them is the observation of the plant. Oftentimes, we connect with a plant for a long time before an essence is actually made from it. And we observe what we call its gesture, its signature, where it grows, the kind of environment, and how it interacts with that environment, how it interacts with other plants, its patterns of growth, color, strength, root system, foliage, how it unfolds through the seasons, how it changes through the seasons, and its whole cycle of life and death and all of that. So the physical observation of the plant is part of the process, but also the beyond physical, what you can see if you have your inner eyes open and you're observing the kind of radiance, the kind of presence that that plant transmits. So that's one of the levels of study of flower essences and the plants. The other level is also listening to what the Davic presences of that plant have to say, to what the intelligence of the species of that plant has to say to us. And in that way, it can be similar to channeling in a sense that we're opening ourselves to receive that information. And then there's also experience in giving the essences to individuals, humans, but also animals, and sometimes, babies, and observing the results and reporting the results and organizing that accumulated data of experiences and results on the use of each specific flower essence. And that's one of the things that makes some of the flower essence companies have a lot of credibility, because they have all this, years and years of gathering results of research and case studies. And that begins to shape and put into focus the specific unique qualities of each essence. It's the combination of these different levels of study and observation and gathering of data.
Wow, that is so interesting. So I love your connection with the plants, and I love that your videos on your website and the pictures and everything are so beautiful. There's my intuition is clear that you have a, a deeper type of connection with nature than most of us ever even dream of. And so I really, really respect that you have this ability to communicate with the overarching deva of each of the plants, to listen to the information. And I really believe that plants are huge teachers. I've been studying with sacred plant medicines, and I've learned so much from these plant teachers. So I really super, super honor you and have so much respect. And I heard you mention that these are so safe they can even be used with babies. I think that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, so for all the mamas out there, this is a modality that you could actually work with your children. And then I wanted to ask you, so who are your favorite people to work with? I work with entrepreneurs, and they have a lot of, entrepreneurs are just people, and like everybody, we have emotions, sometimes up and down or sideways. And so is there anything you offer? Like, how do you help people with their emotions? What kind of people do you work
Yeah, well, it's one of the ways that people come to me is because sometimes people are going through major emotional trials or upsets, and then their friends say, "Oh, you have to go see Ruth." I'm not going to explain to you why, but just go. And from moments of joy to moments of shattering trauma and shock. I've been receiving people in situations like this couple that came to me many years ago, and their daughter, 8 years old, had just died, and so I was working and supporting them through their process. A woman whose husband left her for the secretary, and all of a sudden, and I mean, so many situations like that. Um, and then people continue working with me, and these situations evolve into a whole other journey of eventually people flourishing into the new version of themselves, in which they have embraced the dark and the light and the initiations that they went through, and they come out on the other side. But one of the areas that has become a very important area of inner work that I've been guiding people, and in a special way, women, has been the area of what I now call transforming your inner relationship template. And I'm calling this process the inner marriage um, journey, the inner marriage journey. And oftentimes it is something that women who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're really yearning either for a relationship that hasn't manifested yet in the stable way that they really want, or for a better and deeper level of harmony and intimacy within their own existing relationship, when there's like power struggles and difficulty in that deeper commitment and integration in their relationship. For this work, what I do, which is what I often do for other kinds of journeys as well, is we actually go deep into the deepest levels of people's self-image and their own relationship to themselves and to their ability to be loved and cherished. So we work on these very deep levels of the internal self-image. And we also work on the inner feminine, the inner masculine, and how one relates to the other, and what kind of imprints the person has had in their early life that shaped that archetypal relationship pattern that they carry within. And so there's a whole unpacking and discovery of what is in there. And there's so much there that is programmed and that is part of people's conditioning and, ancestral heritage and all of that. And there's also a lot that has to do with the culture and with how we are learning to be women in contemporary world, and how often we have become kind of separated from the receptive, from the ability to experience our feminine side as the side that is able to receive and to deeply attune and to also experience deep intimacy. And so we work a lot on many aspects of the inner feminine, aspects of the inner masculine, and of the relationship within, until we actually begin seeing that inner matrix transformed into one that's much more conducive to what we want to manifest in our lives. And as within, so without, that really supports the manifestation of the kind of relationship that they want to have.
Oh my gosh, that is such beautiful work. I mean, relationships are the stuff of life. We always are interrelating with people, and the way we interrelate with people is informed. It's probably maybe 100% informed by our relationship with ourselves. It sounds like you really help people understand so much about themselves, where they came from and how their roots create who they are today and how they have relationships. And then with that brought to conscious light, they can now make different decisions and begin to evolve themselves into the person who's going to create and manifest the relationships that are the most ideal for them in their lives. So I think everybody needs that. And I just want to ask a little bit more about the role of flower essences. And you can't do this work without some help, without a profound degree of insight How do you get to these insights? How do you see into people and help them navigate this? And how do the flower essences play a role in this one-on-one individual work that's so profound?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to say that there are different levels of use of flower essences, and you can use flower essences as just simple home um, teas or remedies or just simply made meals. And so it's absolutely fine to choose your own essences in simple ways for yourself or for your children or for your pet, um, because that's how they were created. They are intended to be used in day to day simple ways. However, the deeper and really transformative path of working with flower essences, that is one in which it's really helpful to have someone who is a guide or a mentor who helps to match that very specific archetypal quality of an essence to the pattern that you are working on, and help to find the right essences that really resonate with your needs. And that's when the deeply transformative catalyzing effect really happens. And
Mm.
so that's one of the reasons why it's really good to have someone guiding you in the journey. And that can be very supportive for you to. And I understand also that your question relates to how do I listen and identify these specific essences for the person. So, the way I work in my practice is there's a lot of listening, a lot of questions that I ask, a lot of listening to the person's story. But at the same time, I have my whole array of essences, and I also work with a pendulum over, holding my hand on each one of the flowers and using the pendulum with the other hand. And in this way, I gather information of what or which ones of these flower archetypes are speaking to that person in that moment. And I begin organizing kind of a thread or a spread, let's say. And as we work together and I listen, I will gradually create some order using my intuition then without the pendulum. The pendulum is just first to gather the first spread, but then my intuition really guides me in, and I'm sure you know the guides and the guides of the person that is with me that I'm working with. And that's when we begin organizing a formula, a combination of essences that really matches that moment that the person is in, and that will encourage them to move towards the next step that is possible. So there's a lot of listening, and there are many players in the process. And I am almost like an interpreter,
Yes.
translator that really brings it all together and also conveys the information with clarity and order.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's such a special talent that you have, talking to the plants, talking to the devas of the plants, listening to your guides, listening to the guides of the person, listening with your mind and your ears, and somehow you have this amazing ability to synthesize all of that and use your tools and gifts to go from, yeah, maybe this realm of flower essences to these are the ones that are going to help this person take next steps. And in my intuition right now, I'm seeing it as um, a resonant invitation. So they're at a pattern that's operating like this, and they want to transform and evolve into another pattern that's over here. And the plants, the flower essences are vibrating at this pattern that invites their energy to shift gradually and gently over into the new pattern. And the new pattern is like, those are the new ways of thinking. And so do you find your clients get insights, realizations, things get easier for them with behavior changes? What are some of the results that your clients experience from these beautiful experiences?
Yeah, well, let's think of certain emotional patterns, for instance, and ways that people respond. So, just one example. Um, when we find that there is a very clear resonance between a certain emotional behavior that the person has. Let's say the person has this tendency of suddenly erupt in these emotional outbursts, and they get totally overtaken by their emotions, and they get explosive and all of that, and then it winds down, but they feel kind of exhausted, and then it's over.
PMS.
So, and when during a consultation we identify the plant and there's the signature of the plant, and I show them that plant and how it's going to help them have mastery over that intensity, and how that intensity can be directed in different ways and embodied in different ways, so that they can own that, but it's not overtaking them. Um, and they begin to work with that essence, and they begin to feel that gradually they're becoming more and more masters of themselves around that specific archetypal pattern that they had a tendency to experience in the most out of control way, let's say. And it's not that they suppress the emotional experience, quite on the contrary, they gain more insight into what's kind of provoking those outbursts, etc., what usually triggers them. And yet they also gain the ability to see how they can become masters of themselves around that, and how they can embody the powers that are hidden in that pattern itself. So there's always this spectrum of the positive and the negative aspects, but how can we own the totality and integrate the whole in ways that are wiser?
Oh my gosh. I I can just think of like 30 different people that all have various different types of difficulty regulating their emotions. And that idea of being the master of your emotions, because there is some, even in that like flying off the handle, there are some moments when an eruption of passion is the perfect thing for the situation. Or you may want to feel that passion and harness it in a positive way. So I think emotional mastery is valuable to so many people. And I love the way the flower essences create a gentle process of successive insights where people can just gradually and naturally evolve and not feel so self-sabotaging, not feel like they're beating themselves up or doing something horrible, but to just gradually accept the way they are and to see the good in it and to evolve into a state of mastery for who they really are and how their emotions really work. We don't need to suppress anything, we just need the mastery.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I would like to add here that I think will be quite relevant for your audience and mine as well. Um, Oftentimes we go through transformative processes and we have these amazing insights and we feel we've changed. And yet, in our system, we carry constructions that are in a subtle level that are related to the habits that have become profoundly ingrained in the way we function, oftentimes from very early in life.
Definitely.
And even though we may have gone through a deep transformative process, there may be leftovers of those structures.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that my guides instructed me in pointing out, that nature and plants have this amazing ability to deal with change and transformation and evolving to the next stage. And so the intelligence of plants really help us to let go of certain forms while at the same time bringing forth the newly organized form that we want to embody. And so flower essences are so helpful in the process of recycling, integration, and uh, building that integrated whole in a new way as we move through our evolutionary process.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. I've seen clients too who are very like growth oriented, personal development oriented. They take classes and they evolve and they change. And especially in our busy societies, usually we'll follow a process, get a result, and then move on to the next shiny object process. We don't oftentimes really even finish our process that we started before. I mean, how many of us have gotten halfway through a training program, right? And so we have all these loose ends, and sometimes the loose ends are the things that come back to haunt us in and of themselves. So I love this idea that the flower essences could tie up all those loose ends, bring to fullness and completion these halfway processes, because when we are really fully integrated with all of those transformations, we get this huge bump up. We just kind of automatically level up. And we're like, I mean, talk about mastery. All of a sudden, we've got big pants on and we can like go and do much bigger things in the world than we thought we were able to do before. Bigger things than we thought we were capable of.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Well, I want to begin to wrap up a little bit, and I just want to go back to a very brief, uh, different angle on the magical topic of flower essences. And I moved a bunch of times, and I ended up having to give all of my beautiful essences to my closest friend, and I switched to cards. And so I noticed that you've got beautiful pictures on your wall there and on your website and on Instagram. And will you explain the power of an image? And I'm just going to show a couple to the camera. This is what I'm talking about, a professional, really nicely done. This is Australian bush flower essences. These really nicely done photographs, and how people can benefit at home from maybe having one of these deck of cards around in the house.
Well, we're actually dealing with the archetypal presence of the plant, and especially its presence through the flower. And the moment of flowering is one in which it's almost like the soul of the plant, and its most kind of its highest expression manifests into form. And there is this amazing transcendental pattern of uniqueness and beauty. And that comes through the image, even when you don't have the actual plant close to you. You can really resonate with the image, and especially if you are connecting with that image and invoking its evolutionary message and information, what its archetypal quality is that wants to speak to you. And one of the ways that many people work is to give clients or friends the deck of cards and help them check which is the flower or plant that they feel a lot of resonance with it, either in a positive or sometimes even in a negative way, like, I am feeling aversion to this one. And then go check and see what the message is, or even really connect with that and experience the blessing that it has to give to you. And
Mm.
it does offer that blessing, even when you don't have the actual preparation of the essence itself, because it is the presence of that archetypal um, Davic force that
Mm.
you connect with through
Thank
the
you.
image. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it's what I have around me because I'm not able to have the bottles, and they've been so supportive. If I have an off day, I'll pull a couple of cards, and I'm just so grateful for their support and assistance. Especially when I was in a toxic workplace, I pulled cards every single morning, and I swear that's how I got through the day. Oh, Ruth, it's just been such a delight and pleasure to understand how you work and to draw out this amazing 30 years of expertise of helping people navigate these very intimate and profound and deep places of their relationship with themselves and how that creates the life that they want, and helping people to master their emotions and flow through and manage and process their emotions, for example, in a time of grief. And this is, it's a privilege to talk with you. It's a privilege to find out more about your work. But thank you so much for being with me today. And I really have so much respect for your work.
Thank you so much, Octavia. It's been a great conversation, and I have really enjoyed it. And I look forward to even more of this, because it's just wonderful how, when we interact with one another, we can bring out the treasures of what we have to offer to the world. So thank you so much for the
Thank you.
opportunity.